In this episode, we'll be talking about, or rather, going over the infamous W-2. Welcome back to another episode of The Bemused. On this channel, we talk about all things personal finance for young adults just like you and me. So, before we get started, first thing, just wanted to apologize. I do have a laptop right below me, so if you see me glance down, it's because I am just checking to make sure that I'm going over all the boxes and I don't miss anything. And then two, as a huge disclaimer, any of the information that is mentioned in this video is just for informational purposes, but you want to consult your specific tax professional or advisor when filing your taxes. Word of advice. As someone who has prepared a couple hundred W-2s for our employees, something that you want to make sure that you do with your employer is update your address. It might seem really small and insignificant, but you want to make sure that your employer has the most current address for you so that when they are sending your W-2 via mail or to email, whatever it is, whatever software or system that they're using, that they're getting it to the correct place. One thing that you don't want is that you're ready to file your taxes and you don't have the information that you need. So now let's jump into the W-2. So box A on the W-2. So this is you, the employee's social security number. So pretty self-explanatory. Some employers will truncate the social security number and only include the last four digits. But generally that's all you're gonna see in box A on your W-2. So box B. This is the employer identification number, or EIN. So really pay no attention to it. It is just something that your employer, kind of like their social security number, that's what's going to be listed there. Box C, that's going to contain the employer's name, zip code, and address in that box. Again, just general information from your employer. Box D, this is where the control number will be listed. Depending on employer and what the rules are for that specific type of employer, this may or may not be listed on your W-2, but that's what that's for. So box E, this is going to contain the employee's first name, middle initial, and their last name. It's also going to contain the address, the most recent address that you have provided to your employer. So again, make sure that you update that if it has changed. Every time it changes, please update your employer so they're sending it to the most accurate location, most recent location. That's better. So now that we've breezed through all of the demographical information that is going to be listed on your W-2, let's get into the meat of what you really need to know. So box 1, this is where your wage, tips, and other compensation is going to be listed. So wages or any income that you received from your employer throughout that year, calendar year, is generally what it's going to be from January 1st until December 31st of that year is what is going to be listed in box 1. So aside from just your earnings that you've received in that calendar year, your box 1 wages is also going to include any bonuses that you've received and any sort of income that you've received from your employer is going to be listed in that box. So if you receive your W-2 and you notice that something looks a little off, here are some things to consider. It's probably not off, we hope so, that your employer did did everything correctly. But some things that affect box 1 are if you are receiving a taxable benefit from your employer for things such as group life insurance. Anything over $50,000 is considered taxable income as stipulated by the IRS. So whatever the taxable income that you have received for that benefit is going to be added to box 1. So in my case, I received about $30 that was added into my box 1 wages or income. So let's say I made $50,000 for 2019, I would have saw $50,000 plus the $30, so I would have saw $50,030. And that's what would be in my box 1 wages. Something else that is going to affect your box 1 wages is if you, as the employee, have enrolled in any benefits that are going to reduce your taxable income, such as FSAs. FSA stands for Flexible Spending Accounts. There are generally about 2 flexible spending on medical accounts and flexible spending dependent care accounts. Not going to go into the difference between those, but that's generally what's going to reduce your taxable income. For some employers, you also might be able to, your income might be reduced for medical premiums. Another big one is your 401k or 403b in my case. If you are just a regular, not Roth, if you just have a regular 403b or 401k plan, that is also going to reduce your taxable income. So, example, again, going back to that example, if I made $50,000 in 2019, and let's say I contributed $5,000 towards my 401k or 403b that year. So my income would be reduced by $5,000, which is what I contributed. So it would show $45,000. And just to be consistent, if we were to add back in the taxable income from that benefit that we received for life insurance, we would add back in the $30 that I mentioned previously. So my income in box 1 would show $45,030. And this is not, considering any things that I mentioned before, FSAs, all of that would also, same principle, reduce my taxable income. So that in a nutshell is box 1. So now that you have the framework to understand what box 1 is and what it's reflecting, you can look at your pay stubs, go through it. Generally, your last pay stub for the year will have all your year-to-date totals, and you can use that as a guide to help you figure out if your box 1 wages are actually correct. Box 2. So this is the cumulative federal tax that was withheld throughout the entire calendar year. A way that you can check to make sure that this box is correct is by checking your last pay stub for the year to make sure that the year-to-date total that is listed on your final pay stub is also matching what is in box 2. And if you're just a complete perfectionist like some of us are, you can double check and make sure that everything is correct by looking at your previous pay stubs throughout the entire year, and if you'd like, adding everything up to make sure that it is correct. But the choice is yours, either using the final pay stub for the year or just going through all of them, whatever works best for you. So box 3 is Social Security wages. This box will generally match box 1, but not always. So unlike box 1, where it is reduced by all of those items that were listed earlier, Social Security wages are not reduced by flexible spending and other things that will reduce the taxable income. Now moving on to box 4. Social Security tax withheld. So the tax rate for Social Security is 6.2%, and the 2019 Social Security wage base figure was $132,900. So what this means is each paycheck, 6.2% of your earnings up to $132,900 for the year will be deducted and contributed towards Social Security. Box 5. This is Medicare wages and tips. So this box generally will match box 3. So box 3 and 5 generally will be around the same figure, and box 1 is where, like we mentioned before, the things that affect that can be a little different. But box 3 and 5 should generally always match. And the exception is if you've made over the wage base, like we mentioned earlier, because unlike Social Security, Medicare does not have a wage-based cap. So now moving on to box 6. Box 6 is Medicare tax withheld for that year, and the tax rate for Medicare is 1.45%. So each paycheck, just like Social Security wages, well, a little bit different than Social Security wages, 1.45% will be withheld towards Medicare. And I know that some of you out there might be wondering what is Social Security and Medicare. The way how the federal government has set it up, this is something that is withheld from your check, and you honestly, I'm not going to say you shouldn't worry about it. You should always check to make sure that this is being withheld, unless you're exempt, and there are a few people that are exempt from this tax. One of them is students, and there are a few others. But you want to check your paycheck just to make sure that this is being withheld so that down the line that you don't run into any issues. So at the end of each year, something that you want to make sure that you do is to check with the Social Security Administration to make sure that your contributions and the wages that were for that year are accurate and up to date in their system. Let's go with that. So Akiva actually did a video on this, which we're going to mention up above and put in the cards for you to actually take a look at that. So box 7 is Social Security tips. If you add your Social Security wages and your Social Security tips together, you should come up with the amount of the wages shown in box 1 on your W-2, generally. because like we mentioned, box 1 can be reduced by those items that were listed before. Box 8, allocated tips. Allocated tips are the amount your employer reports as part of your income. Allocated tips are based on a percentage of your food and drink transactions. Not all employers are required to denote allocated tips on a W-2. So when I think of allocated tips, I believe that these are probably employees that work in restaurant, that type of, environment. Box 10 is dependent care benefits. So you won't have to guess how much you contributed towards dependent care, which is a flexible spending account, which was mentioned before. You're not going to have to guess because the amount that you've contributed for the year will be listed in this box. So this is a great way for you to double check your numbers and make sure that your box 1 wages are showing the correct figure, because you'll be able to see exactly how much you contributed in that calendar year towards dependent care benefits. And again, if you're a little paranoid or you just want to make sure that everything is correct, another way to check this is by either looking at the last pay stub of the year and checking the year-to-date amount that was contributed, or by going through every pay stub throughout that calendar year and seeing exactly how much it adds up to. Box 11, non-qualified plans. For most people, this box will be empty, but yeah, that's what it is, non-qualified plans. Box 12. So for box 12, there's actually like a box 12A, a box 12B, a box 12C, and a box 12D. So in box 12A, you'll see that as the primary box number or identifier, and then below that you'll see a code, another letter, identifying what exactly is represented in that box. So in my case, box 12 shows a 12A, has a C right below it. And that C represents the amount of that was added to my taxable income for my group term life insurance that is over $50,000. So in my case for this year, box 12A reflects a C, and then right next to it, it has $30 listed, because that is the amount that was added into my taxable income for my group term life insurance that my employer offers to all of the employees. So box 13 is generally going to be some check marks that you will see if one of the categories apply to you. So the first one is statutory employee. So this is an employee who is an independent contractor who qualifies for employee treatment. And the IRS will list what the difference between an independent contractor and an employee is, because there is a difference. We'll have that listed down in the description box below. Retirement plan, if you have contributed to your retirement plan, this box will generally be checked. And then for third-party sick pay, this is, we believe, generally an employee who, example might be if they're on some sort of disability and being paid by the employer's insurance company or something like that. The income that the employee has received throughout the year from that third-party agency will be reflected as income to that employee. And if that was the case, then the third-party sick pay box will be checked off on your W-2. Skipping down to box 14. This box is listed as other. And generally it is, I don't want to say free for all, but it is where all of the other things that is not specifically categorized in the boxes mentioned before will be listed. So for myself, this box is blank. As well as for Akiva. So generally for most people, that box will be empty. But for clergy, so parsonage is what is listed in the individuals that I prepared their W-2s that are clergy for my employer. Box 15 is the state code, or the state acronym that is listed in this box. Just something for you to know, that in the state box, it's not just the state that taxes were withheld for that calendar year, it's where you worked. So on my W-2, the only thing that is listed is MD for Maryland. For Akiva, because the nature of her job is to travel around a little bit more, her employer actually keeps detailed records of where all of their employees are working. So on her W-2, it has MA for Massachusetts, and then NY for some of the days that she worked in New York. Both are listed. Both states are listed, excuse me. Then part 2 to box 15 is the employer state ID number. So again, this is kind of like the employer's social security number specific to that state that it's going to be listed in that box. So for my W-2, it just had the Maryland employer state ID number. For Akiva, it had their ID number for Massachusetts, and then for New York. Then box 16, this is the state, wages, tips, and etc. It's going to just take into consideration all of the funds that you have earned in that specific state, and not necessarily earned in that state, because in Akiva's example, her box 1 and box 15, all of the states that she worked in throughout the year, the income matches. So there's no like, oh, well, you only worked one day in New York, so let's put $100 because that's what you earned on that day. It's including the income that she made throughout the year in that for both states. And that's specific to New York in her example, but each state will have different rules on the income that needs to be reported in that box. Something that you want to do in your own spare time is to check out what the rules of that state are to make sure that it is reflected correctly, so that you're not paying taxes on income that you should not pay taxes on, if that makes sense. Box 17 is the state income tax withheld. So this is going to vary based on the state that you're in, what their tax rate is. So again, just simply what was withheld that year in taxes for that state. Box 18, so if you live in a state that has different county taxes or local municipalities, that was a mouthful, Akiva had to teach me how to say that, the earnings will be listed there for the calendar year. And then box 19, the local income tax withheld, it should also reflect whatever income tax was withheld for that specific county or local municipality in that box. And then finally, box 20, the locality name. So this is just going to reflect whatever the county or the name of the local municipality is listed in box 20. So just like box 15, where it has, Maryland or New York, wherever it is that you're from, it's going to have whatever county is reflected in that specific state. And that, friends, is your W-2, how to understand it in a nutshell. We're also going to have a few links below. We found a great article from H&R Block, one from Zenefits, from just really great reputable sources for you to take a quick glance through to help you understand your W-2 a little bit further. And I know that during this tax time and tax season that everyone is, in the, oh, my refund, my this, my that, which is great. But you also want to make sure that you understand your W-2 to make sure that what has been reported to the IRS is accurate. If for whatever reason you do not believe that, well, not believe, after you've actually watched this video and gone through your pay stubs and went to the IRS to read certain articles to make sure that things are reported as they should, if anything is incorrect, you want to make sure that you report that to your employer immediately so that they can complete what is called a W-2C for correction. Once your employer completes a W-2C, that will then be sent to the IRS so that they have the most accurate information, and that is what will be used to file your income tax. Unfortunately, generally there will be some sort of a delay because W-2Cs, if I remember correctly, have to be submitted, cannot be uploaded directly to the IRS's website, has to be sent a specific way. So that will delay you being able to complete your tax return for that year. But you can ask for an extension on completing your taxes. So thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss when we post a new video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye. Social Security wages,
Not the wages, the tax. Okay.
So box 4 is the Social Security. 6.2% will be withheld based off that. So thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the, I think that it's, I don't know what this box is.